Thank you, Riley. This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Good morning and welcome to church. We are not in the sanctuary, but this is still church. For church is not the building, it is the people. And wherever we are gathered is sanctuary. I welcome those of you who would normally be in our pews and those who have joined us for this online worship in the past weeks. Beth and I, like you, are connecting for these services from our homes with the help of Michael Feeney providing technical guidance and support from his home. And I hope you'll all join together after this service for a social hour over this same Zoom program. Here's a look at what's happening this week. Tomorrow night, Brian will lead a meditation series beginning at 8:30 p.m. It's timed to help us put off stress at the end of the day. Brian talks a little about the practice of meditation, and there are usually 2 times of silence. Even over Zoom, the energy is different when you're meditating with others. I encourage you to try it. On Tuesday evening, the parish committee invites anyone who's interested in becoming a member of our church to join them for some conversation. Bring your glass of wine or your cup of tea and just come and hang out and talk about life at First Parish. Let me know if you're interested. On Wednesday for story time, I'll be reading The Way to Start a Day by Bird Baylor. And if you think you're too old for story time, though no one is, join me for afternoon tea on Thursday. Zoom links are all shared over email, so if you're not on our list, send us a message through our Facebook page or our website, firstparishscituate.org. On Saturday, we're going to have a limited version of our annual plant sale. Seedlings will be available at the church and at Vicki Davis's home. We're spreading them out to ensure social distancing. There'll be more information in the What's Happening and our Friends Facebook page, but please remember to stop by. Though we haven't been taking a formal offering during these online services, if you'd like to support First Parish, you'll find a donation button on our website. And if you haven't yet made a financial pledge for the coming year and would like to, please let Alma Morrison or a member of the parish committee know. They're working on setting our budget for next year, and it would help to know how much money might come in. This ends our announcements. We are in the season of resurrection, of life rising from seeming death, as Kay Shaw's butterfly painting reminds us. In her painting, we see the beauty of the butterfly, and we remember that without the struggle to grow and break free from its cocoon, that beauty would never come into being. Today, as we celebrate mothering and all that it offers, we remember the struggle as well as the beauty. I invite you now, if you have a candle, to light it as I light our chalice. Oh, I never lit the candles. Poet Adrienne Rich wrote, "My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. May our lights remind us of the ways that extraordinary power shines from us and around us. Let us say together the covenant of our church. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to cherish the living earth,
to seek truth and love, and to help one another.
I invite you now to sing along on our opening hymn.
All
This is the time in the service where if we were together, I would invite the children and anybody else who wanted to come down front and join me for some conversation. So as I've been saying now, if you want, get a little closer to the screen, and actually I can sort of see some of you off on the side of my screen, so that's kind of nice. It's Mother's Day, and I hope that at least some of you have been doing nice things for your mothers if they are with you, or mothers who are away from you. I screen shifted so I could see Ann Carbo along with Patrick and Matthew. That's really nice to see you all together. I was thinking this week about the word mother. Mother is a noun, we know that, but it's also a verb. And when I looked it up, mother means to care for and to nurture people in a way that brings out their potential and makes them safe, helps them become who they are. And it occurred to me that you don't have to be female to mother. Anybody can mother. You don't even have to be a grown-up to mother. We can all mother each other in caring for people. And there's a lot of mothering going on in our world right now. We see it in the doctors and the nurses and all the technicians who are in hospitals and caring for sick people, the ambulance drivers, all the people, the cleaners, all the people it takes to make our healthcare system work. We see it in the people who are bringing us food, both friends and family who are mothering us in that way, and also the people who just deliver food that we order or deliver other things we need. They're mothering us. They're caring for us to keep us safe. So many people are working together to be mothers in that way of being. And I'm hoping that today we can celebrate that, not just our own personal mothers or our own personal mothering, but the way we all mother and that we all are mothers. And that's really what this day was supposed to be. When it started in 1870, it was started by Julia Ward Howe, who I'll be talking about a little more later. But after the Civil War, she was so disturbed by the violence, by the way so many soldiers died, but also the pain and the way they were so upset, the soldiers who came back, and there were wars going on in other countries. And so she saw Mother's Day as a day for mothers to get out there and advocate for peace. And so I always try to hold that up for us on Mother's Day, that we celebrate our mothers, but that we also try to remember to mother the world. And she wrote a beautiful proclamation to try to call everybody together for this first Mother's Day. And some of the members of our congregation read her proclamation this week and recorded themselves reading it. And so now Michael's going to share their recording of her call with you all.
Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly,
we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We women of one country shall be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs.
From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession.
As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them then solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each learning after his own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God.
In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask, that a general congress of women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period consistent with its objects, to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, and the great and general interests of peace.
Thank you all for that beautiful reading. So holding on to that vision of peace, let's move into our time of prayer and meditation by singing Peace, Salam, Shalom. Beth will lead us in singing it, and I invite you to join in at home.
Peace, salam, shalom. 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 Peace, salam, shalom.
Thank you, Beth. So this is the time in the service where we share our joys and our sorrows with one another. As we've been doing it now over Zoom, I invite you, if you have a joy or a sorrow to share, to go into the box where it says participants, look down to the bottom right, it's on my screen, but it might be in a different place on yours. And there are 3 dots. If you click on the dots, you'll see a thing that says wave hand. So if you have a joy or sorrow you'd like to share, wave your hand in that way, not this way. That makes it hard to find you. So wave your Zoom hand, or type in the chat, I have a joy or sorrow to share. Or the third way to do it, if you don't want to be on camera, is to type your joy or sorrow into the chat fully, and Michael will share it for you. So I invite you now to share your joys and your sorrows.
My joy is that I got to play with my sister out in our treehouse this morning.
That's lovely. Let's say our response. May love abound.
May love abound.
And I place 1 stone for Amelia and Ellie's joy.
I've got a joy from Kim Dickinson. Joy for hearing women of our congregation read the words of Julia Ward Howe. And a sorrow for friends who are sheltering alone.
I'm placing a stone for Kim's joy and a stone for her sorrow. Let us say our response, may love abound.
We have a joy from none other than Beth. I'm grateful that my 87-year-old mother is healthy and that my 2 daughters are safe and well.
We place a stone for Beth's joy. May love abound.
We have one from Patrick Corbo. My joy is that I am here with my family and everyone at church.
We join you in that joy, Patrick. Whether we are alone or together, we are here together now. I place this stone for that. May love abound.
From the Suttons. Our joy is that Amelia got the librarian job and graduated on the same day.
Congratulations, Amelia.
And joy to the Smiths as well. I saw that Devin graduated sign on Mordecai Lincoln.
Let's share all those joys. The stone for Amelia and a stone for Devin. Let's say our response, may love abound.
From Win. Joy for everyone who came out to celebrate Danny Tercha's Jewel's birthday yesterday.
Let's place a stone in memory of Danny. And let's say our response, may love abound. I place one final stone for the joys and sorrows present but unspoken among us. Would you join me in our unison prayer? We give thanks for being. We give thanks
for being here. We give thanks for being here together.
O you who holds us in love, as a mother holds a child, we give thanks during this time of isolation, that whether we are with other people or by ourselves, we know we are held in love. We give thanks for all the hands and words and connections by which that love shows itself to us. And we give thanks for the ways we are able to show the strength of that connection to others. We give thanks for all the ways that we are mothered and for all the ways that we are mothering. We give thanks too, looking back at our own lives, for all the people who have mothered us, teachers as well as parents, aunts and uncles, neighbors, friends, strangers. So many people have brought us to be the people we are, thanks to the ways they nurtured us and cared for us, and saw potential in us that sometimes we did not see in ourselves. Even when our own biological or adoptive mothers did not see this, we give thanks for the ways others mothered us. We give thanks that all of us have known mothering in some ways, and that we have been able to offer the gift of that mothering to others. We pray for our world, which so needs to be mothered at this time, for all who are sick, all who are living in injustice, all who are living in fear, all who do not live in safe places. There is so much care needed. Help us to know that it is not all ours to give, that each of us has a way that we are called to mother, and that we can trust that others are doing their part in creating one great family of connection, love, and care. May our world be blessed with the gifts of mothering, and may we be part of that gift. In silence now, let us take time for our own prayer and our own meditation. One of the good things to come out of this time of pandemic is the poetry. In services, in the What's Happening, and on Facebook, I've shared with you some of the poems that have been feeding me. This week I came across another poem, and as I looked into it, I realized it's a little different. This poem is being written as it goes along. The poem started with a Twitter post by the British writer Damien Barr. In response to politicians talking about how we're all in the same boat during these times, he tweeted, "We are not all in the same boat. We are in the same storm. Some of us are on super yachts. Some of us have just the one oar." And it took off from there. Artists illustrated it, like this picture by Barbara Kelly for the Wall Street Journal, and people began to add their own metaphors and examples. So if you look for it, you'll find it in different variations. Here's one version. Your ship could be shipwrecked, and mine might not be, or vice versa. For some, quarantine is optimal, a moment of reflections, of reconnection, easy and flip-flops with a cocktail or coffee. For others, this is a desperate financial and family crisis. For some that live alone, they're facing endless loneliness, while for others it is peace, rest, and time with their mother, fathers, sons, and daughters. With the $600 US weekly increase in unemployment, some are bringing in more money to their households than they were working. Others are working more hours for less money because of pay cuts or loss in commission sales. Some families of four just received $3,400 from the stimulus package, while other families of four saw zero. Some were concerned about getting a certain candy for Easter, while others were concerned if there would be enough bread, milk, and eggs for the weekend. Some have experienced the near death of the virus. Some have already lost someone from it, and some are not sure if their loved ones are going to make it. Others don't believe this is a big deal. Some believe God will send miracles during 2020. Others say the worst is yet to come. We are all on different ships during this storm, experiencing a very different journey. And the poem ends, "Realize that and be kind." If you were to add your line to the poem, what contrasts would you highlight? The poem spoke to me because the differences in how members of our society are experiencing this time have been weighing especially heavily on me this week. The disparities in those who become ill, in those who die, in my ability to stay home and self-isolate while others can't live so safely, in some people having to go back to work in places which are not safe for them, in disparities of care based on ethnicity, skin color, and wealth, in the ongoing attack on the environmental standards, and in the news of the death of Ahmaud Arbery, and then the state of Georgia's failure to prosecute the men who attacked him until there was a public outcry. It's easy to feel hopeless and helpless. So let's ask WWJD and WWFD. Not what would Jesus do, though both the J and the F I'm referring to might have asked that question for themselves, but what would Julia do? And what would Florence do? Julia Ward Howe and Florence Nightingale, I mean. I always, as I said earlier, think of Julia Ward Howe at this time of year and her intention when she called for the first Mother's Day, for it to be a day for mothers to advocate for peace, not a day to celebrate our deceased mothers, which was how it later came to be legislated. I had planned to talk more about her vision for Mother's Day today, but it's also the 200th anniversary of the birth of Florence Nightingale on Tuesday. And as I looked into her life, I realized that Nightingale and Ward Howe have a lot to say to us today. Julia Ward Howe and Florence Nightingale were contemporaries, born in 1819 and 1820, and as adults they became good friends. Nightingale was godmother to one of Ward Howe's daughters. Both came from privileged, wealthy backgrounds. Both were Unitarians who internalized our tradition's teaching that Jesus offers an example to be followed. Both benefited from fathers who educated their daughters at home as if they were sons. Julia Ward Howe read philosophy and poetry and political works. Florence Nightingale studied science and mathematics, and both rebelled against the constraints put on the lives of women of their time and class. As a young woman, Julia Ward Howe gave into those constraints and married Samuel Howe, the head of the Perkins School for the Blind. He was a fierce abolitionist and part of the circle of transcendentalists around Ralph Waldo Emerson. Julia Ward Howe thought he would expand her life, but she didn't realize until after their marriage that Howe's belief in freedom didn't extend to married women. He believed his wife should stay home in their cottage on the school grounds and raise children. She quickly had 6, and defer to him in all decisions. He believed she shouldn't write, and if she did, she certainly shouldn't publish. After years of depression under these constraints, she anonymously published a book of poetry describing their marriage, her struggles with the demands and erasures of motherhood, and her husband's infidelities. Her husband wasn't pleased, to put it lightly, when the author's identity came out, but the book was a huge success. Nathaniel Hawthorne recommended it, along with Thoreau's book Walden, to Europeans who wanted to know what American literature they should be reading. She considered leaving her husband, but he told her she would never see her children again if she did, and that was his right at the time. In 1861, she wrote the poem which became the battle hymn of the Republic, the anthem of the Civil War. It inspired people to continue to fight the battle against slavery, but she herself wasn't freed until her husband's death. Then, though war had freed the slaves, she decided that the costs of war were too heavy. She saw the soldiers coming back traumatized and how many never came back. And she began to advocate for peace, for an end to war, traveling around the world to organize women to take part in that movement. Back at home, she fought for the passage of the 14th and 15th Amendments and founded the Association for the Advancement of Women, where she was joined by Susan B. Anthony and Lucy Stone in working for women's suffrage. Florence Nightingale is known as the Lady with the Lamp, and there's even now a Barbie of her carrying her lamp to look at the soldiers she nursed in the Crimean War. But the Barbie with the light isn't perhaps the most inspiring part of her story. At 14, Florence Nightingale became one of the first women admitted to the British Association for the Advancement of Science. At 16, after nursing her family through an influenza epidemic, she heard God call her to dedicate her life to service. While her father encouraged her study of science, he didn't want her putting that knowledge into practice. He thought her duty was to marry well and care for a family. Nice women of her day didn't work outside the home. Her parents brought her to London to meet eligible men. And when one of them proposed, she didn't know what to do. She actually asked Julia Ward Howe's husband, Samuel, who happened to be visiting, if it would be unsuitable for her to become a nurse. And he answered that it would be unusual, and whatever is unusual in England is thought unsuitable. But he told her, surprisingly, go forward if you have a vocation for that way of life. Act up to your aspiration until you find that there is never anything unbecoming or unladylike in doing your duty for the good of others. But he later told his wife that if he had been engaged to Florence Nightingale and loved her ever so dearly, he would have given her up as soon as she commenced her career as a public woman. Because her parents still wouldn't let her study nursing, she drew on her knowledge of science and math and educated herself in the statistics of public health. She later wrote, "Statistics is the most important science in the whole world, for upon it depends the practical application of every other science and of every art, the one science essential to all political and social administration, all education, all organization based on experience, for it only gives results of our experience." Because of her knowledge of statistics and of book nursing, she was asked to become the head of a hospital for gentlewomen, and perhaps because of the population it served, her parents agreed to let her take on the work. When war broke out in the Crimea, she was asked to go overseas to oversee the hospital for British soldiers. She was shocked at what she found. Soldiers lying on pallets on filthy floors with rats crawling over them, windows closed, increasing the stench, rotten, unhealthful food. She and her nurses cleared things up, literally and metaphorically. She set standards for care and cleanliness. She walked the floors at night, talking to the soldiers, treating their spirits as well as their bodies. And she kept statistics so that she could argue with facts for the difference that this kind of nursing made in the outcomes. When she returned to Britain, she found herself a celebrity. She didn't like being in the limelight, but she knew how to use the power which came with the public appreciation and interest. She transformed hospital care in England, and placed the foundations of what became the National Health Service, started a school for nursing, which still continues that work, and agitated throughout her life for programs, practices, and understanding which would promote the care of all people, regardless of their place in society, always turning to her beloved statistics to back up her arguments. So, WWJD and WWFD. I think they would continue to draw upon their own experiences of being marginalized because of their sex and intellect, to see truly the needs and conditions of others who are being dismissed. They would offer ideas which drew upon their knowledge of political philosophy, science, statistics, and even art. They would be contacting everyone they knew. They would turn to their faith for support. They would keep going. Julia Ward Howe's daughter described an instance where she put a foolish woman, as the daughter put it, whereas she put it, a foolish woman said to her mother, "Oh dear Mrs. Howe, you are so full of inspiration. It enables you to do so much." "Inspiration," said dear Mrs. Howe shortly. "Inspiration means perspiration." And Florence Nightingale, who wrote, "The next Christ will perhaps be a female Christ," also urged, "The kingdom of heaven is within, indeed, but we must also create one without, because we are intended to act upon our circumstances." So how can we channel Nightingale and Ward Howe for our times? We can first and foremost not fall into the ease of helplessness. There is always something to be done. And unlike Nightingale and Ward Howe's time, there are already organizations in place to support us. We can do all that we've been doing to support people living with and caring for those with the virus, from hearts on our doors to donations of masks, to donations of money and meals. We can continue to practice social distancing to try to keep one another safe. But we also need to be looking at the governmental structures and systems which has made what would have been terrible, tragic. We need to keep advocating for changes in our healthcare system, in the application of laws equally and justly, in the funding of education, in the assumptions underlying our tax structures. We need to make sure people understand and vote in the interests of what is best for everyone. And we need to make sure that everyone will be able to vote. the UU Urban Ministry, UU Mass Action, UU The Vote, and a host of environmental and other organizations are all working on making the world safer and fairer for everyone. And though we are home, we can use their materials to educate ourselves, to email those in power and those who need to know more. And we can be prepared for greater actions as circumstances permit. Julia Ward Howe and Florence Nightingale are not conventional models of motherhood. Ward Howe mourned that though she loved her children, she wasn't fulfilled alone by motherhood. And Nightingale never married or had children, but each mothered in ways that are also open to us. They recognized the potential inherent in each person and did all they could to set up structures and systems which would allow that potential to grow into blossom and fruit. On this Mother's Day, let us too, whatever our sex or our experience, resolve to offer this mothering so that we too may rewrite the story of these times to one in which we all have the boats we need to meet whatever storms may hit us. That's now going to lead us in singing Julia Ward Howe's famous hymn, Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord, who is traveling up the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored, and he's loosed the faithful lightning, all the terror across the sword. God's truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. The truth is marching on. God has sounded forth the trumpet that shall ever call retreat, and is sifting out the hearts of all before the judgment seat. Oh, be swift, my soul, to answer, and be jubilant, my feet, for God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. The truth is marching on. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea. With the glory in his bosom, captains, makers, you and me. As he died to make us holy, let us live to make all free. For God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. The truth is marching on.
And now in your goings out and in your comings home, may God bless you and keep you. May you know yourself held in that mothering love, and may mothering love flow from you to the world. Go in peace and in love.